You're watching Euronews now. I'm Takun Bosilako with your top stories. Russia says the port of Mariupol is working again after 3 months of fighting. Ukraine claims the war is now in its most active phase. Sue Gray's final report on lockdown parties at Downing Street is with the UK's Prime Minister, but will it lead to anyone being punished? And a creepy crime thriller that's caused lots of controversy on the red carpet at Cannes. We'll take a look at the Iranian film Holy Spider.
The biggest offensive in Europe since World War II. This is how Ukraine describes the Russian advance in Donbass. The war in Ukraine has entered its most active phase with the seizure of 3 towns in the eastern Donetsk and Lugansk regions. There, the Russian army killed at least 14 civilians on Tuesday, according to Kyiv.
The enemy continues to use terror tactics against the Ukrainian civilian population in the occupied territories. Also, the deterioration of the socio-economic situation in the south and in the east of Ukraine continues. Over the past day, 16 attacks were repelled in the Donetsk and Luhansk directions. 8 tanks, 22 armored vehicles and an enemy car were destroyed.
As Russia's invasion entered its 4th month, Moscow plans to keep fighting for a long time in Ukraine to achieve all the objectives set by President Vladimir Putin.
We continue the special military operation until all goals are achieved, regardless of the huge Western aid to the Kyiv regime and the unprecedented sanctions pressure.
One of its successful objectives has been the capture of the port city of Mariupol in the south, where Russia has said it has finished removing mines. There have been found the bodies of more than 200 people in the rubble of an apartment building. Now empty, the surrendered Azovstal steel plant, which sheltered thousands of Ukrainian civilians and fighters, shows the extent of the damage after nearly 3 months of siege.
Well, today, after months of waiting, the Sue Gray report into around 16 events inside Downing Street, which are alleged to have broken the lockdown rules carried out over 12 dates, will be released. It was handed in to Downing Street late last night. We understand that it will be released at some point today by Downing Street. It's unclear if that will be before or after Prime Minister's questions at noon. The Prime Minister had also promised to make a statement to the House on the publication of the report. Now, we already know from earlier in the weeks the leaking of that photo which came out showing the Prime Minister purportedly at one of those events where someone else got a fine but he didn't has raised serious questions. The Mayor of London has written to the acting chief of the Metropolitan Police asking why in that instance the Prime Minister didn't receive another fine. It is putting a lot of pressure on the Met, on the investigation they did that stalled the publication of this report, and we know that this report will include yet more photos which will really sharpen the series of events in people's minds. And late last night we also heard in a documentary on the BBC from Downing Street staff themselves, anonymised. A number of them talked about the parties going on late through the night, sometimes people staying right through to the morning, that there were drinks everywhere the following morning, that people were dozens to a room not observing any rules, and that those who tried to stop the events from happening were mocked. We'll see just how damaging this report is for the Prime Minister, because already the tactics are in play. He seems to be announcing on Thursday some emergency financial measures to try to tackle the cost of living crisis, the rising fuel costs, but we'll see whether or not that is simply a distraction from what is about to come today. Vincent McAviney, Euronews, London.
In the US, at least 19 children and 2 adults have been shot dead at a primary school in Texas. The state's Department of Public Safety said a teenager opened fire at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, on Tuesday afternoon. The Associated Press said a nearby Border Patrol officer rushed to the school where he shot and killed the gunman who was behind a barricade.
The shooter was Salvador Romas, an 18-year-old male who resided in Uvalde. It's believed that he abandoned his vehicle and entered into the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde with a handgun, and he may have also had a rifle.
The shooting prompted an immediate call from President Joe Biden for stricter gun controls when he addressed the nation from the White House.
Why are we willing to live with this carnage? Why do we keep letting this happen? Where in God's name is our backbone to have the courage to deal with it and stand up to the lobbies? It's time to turn this pain into action. For every parent, for every citizen in this country, we have to make it clear to every elected official in this country, it's time to act.
Separately, a man wanted for a fatal shooting on a New York City subway train was arrested on Tuesday, just hours after authorities posted his name and photo on social media. Andrew Abdullah faces charges over the shooting of 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez on a train on Sunday.
Lithuania's president came to Davos with a plan and a potential solution for choked Ukrainian grain exports after Russia's blockade of the Odessa port. The siege threatening global food supplies. He says the Baltic countries and Poland could offer an alternative route.
The blocking of the ports would be probably most appropriate alternative to solve this problem. But even if we will not succeed to deblock Odessa, there are also some other alternative channels and some logistical ways to export the grain through the Polish and Baltic port cities.
On a political level, Lithuania's parliament has unanimously voted to recognize the Russian invasion of Ukraine as an act of genocide.
Ukraine is fighting not only for its freedom, Ukraine is fighting for our freedom too. And we understand it as well as probably nobody else in Europe. Being very close to this dangerous country, you know the name of this country.
For this leader, the war in Ukraine is top of his agenda this summit. He expects Lithuania's decision to cut Russian gas imports to set an example for other countries.
At Cannes, one of the films that is gaining attention is Holy Spider by a Danish director of Iranian origin, Ali Abbasi. The film is inspired by a true story of a serial killer in Iran. The killer thought he was eradicating evil by killing sex workers. The film was an international effort requiring production work from multiple countries. But despite this, the director told our culture editor, Fred Pansach, that the movie mirrors modern-day Iran.
I don't think this is more or less an Iranian movie because I live in Denmark, or another actor lives in France, and another guy comes from, Turkey, and it's shot in Jordan. I think that what really makes it, special is our treatment of the story. This is in a way more an Iranian movie than many Iranian movies are, because I would say this reflects more the reality of what happens in an Iranian society than most of the Iranian movies that come from Iran.
The main character of the film is a female journalist who visits Tehran to try to uncover the truth. But she is faced with barriers, such as a police force and a justice system that fails to act. Part of the tension felt throughout the movie is because of the underlying theme of misogyny. Euronews discussed the message of the film with one of its actors at Cannes.
Iranian society will change because of women, and that's why the government and men are so afraid of women. We talk so much about women in a misogynistic, patriarchal society. All this really because we have this fear of women. And for me, in this role, this journalist is representative of all these women.
In the film, The setting of the Iranian city of Mashhad is compared to the unlikely meeting of the Vatican and Las Vegas, a city that is both pious and full of vices. The movie is a film noir that could leave its mark.
We're going to take a little break on the programme, but we'll be back in a few moments with more news and analysis.